So maybe we could kind of jump back to, you were making a point about the kingdom of God.
Right. Okay. So let's get down to this. In a way to make it sensational sounding, I kind of want to give it the title at some point. Everything you know about Christianity is false. What we're taught. Let's start with the simplest thing. What we're taught about death and immortality. We're taught now that you die and go to heaven. Well, that's a very Greek idea. Paul fought against that idea. The idea that immortality consists in the survival of the individual soul, that at the moment of death, its death, his or her death, like the cartoon Spirit, after the bad dude gets killed and suddenly he sprouts wings and he goes to heaven in the cartoons. This ethereal, bodiless creature, it's very important. It's very to understand the Greekness of this idea. It's based upon the idea of a split between the body and the spirit, which is also, when I say Greek, I'm really thinking Plato, and we get into this some other time. But in Plato, you do get this notion of a separable soul, psychic entity. And Socrates, in one of the most important of the Platonic dialogues, the Phaedo, talks about the survival of the eternal part of us, which is not material. It's not made of this stuff of the world. It's not made of atoms and molecules as commonly recognized. It's a different kind of mind or soul stuff. And when you die, that part of you goes somewhere to some realm, and but your physical existence ceases. That's not what we read in the New Testament.
Well, that was also an idea that then got reinforced by René Descartes in his idea of the ghost and the machine, basically formalized the separation between the physical body and some nebulous soul-like material that lived on after death or is in our bodies and is separate from the material part of it.
And that's excellent because in fact, yes, in modern times, in antiquity, of course, it's Plato that you talk about. There are many differences between Plato and Descartes, but there are also some interesting similarities. And one of the important similarities is this dualistic split between body and mind, or body and spirit. You can call it what you like depending upon circumstances, but it's a split between these two different things. Now, this is not Judaism, and it's not Christianity as the New Testament had it. In fact, in Christianity, the basic original Christianity, there's no thought of a future for myself as a disembodied spirit. No, the thought is of the resurrection of the dead. It's a bodily existence. One of the most important texts for this, of course, is 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul insists upon the actual embodiment that people have in the kingdom of God. Now, this means something quite definite and real. It means that the kingdom of God is the world. The world has been transformed. So the planet Earth has been around for 4.6 billion years. And in that period of time, geologically speaking, dramatic changes have occurred. Then somehow around 3 billion, give or take, years ago, life appeared on this planet. A new eon in natural history begins at this point. Life appears. We still don't get that one. But yes, in some sense, it evolved.
That's certainly consistent with Jesus' teaching on the kingdom of God, that it is here now, but then he also talks about it's to come. So he uses different tenses to talk about the same thing as if it's here, yet it's something that also has to evolve or progress.
But there's no big problem there. This gets us to something very, very important in terms of the driving metaphor. The driving metaphor that you find in the New Testament is pregnancy. Along with its partner, the idea of the seed, which is planted and grows. So The kingdom of God is here indeed. Jesus teaches us, and Paul teaches it also. Paul, however, is forced to be very subtle about it in his thinking. But clearly, he and Jesus both depend upon the metaphor of gestation, pregnancy and childbirth. And in fact, in Paul, we are living at the stage of the coming into existence of the kingdom of God. Is it here? Yes. Jesus has made a decisive move. He's entered history. He is the first fruits, Paul calls him, the first fruits. But the process has begun.
Is it possible that you talked about our current idea of what heaven is in terms of it's a place that we go when we die?
Yeah.
You're correct in that was not the case for earliest Christianity. It seems to have developed after the conversion of Constantine, when Christianity becomes a political tool, that now you have the church being responsible for your immortal soul. And you must conform to the principles of the church in order that the whole idea that your immortal souls go someplace to eternal bliss is actually one of the main factors that energized the whole Crusades.
All right, so let's go over this. When was the Council of Nicaea?
It was around 320, 340. I'm not sure the exact date, but
okay.
It was in the 4th century.
In the 4th century. Let's date this. I want to make it very clear that something very curious and mysterious went on here. So I would have to say that even by the end of the 1st century, 100 AD, by around that time, changes were beginning to occur. And why? Because of one decisive thing. We can't leave this out. We'll have to come back to it over and over again. It's something that honest readers of the New Testament must come to terms with and deal with. Above all, they must deal with it honestly. And that is, again, both Jesus and Paul, I'm going to use that subject of my sentence, both Jesus and Paul expected the kingdom of God to be coming very soon, in realistic human terms.
Okay.
Neither of them foresaw 2,000 years of delay. That too is alien to the New Testament. We have to come to terms with the fact that there was an immediacy in the expectation of the kingdom of God that was not fulfilled. This is important because it's clearly a main component in the fact you can already start to see the trouble brewing in Paul's time. People kept saying, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And now it's 65. And now the calamity of the destruction of the Second Temple occurs in 70. A terrible event which makes life even more curious at that time. And a terrible calamity for the Jews. Any argument that this was the Messiah who, well, maybe this is the foreshadowing, and yes, there were revolts, Bar Kokhba, there were whatever. The kingdom of God, Jesus never came back.
Which is something the book of Revelation that was written probably after 100 AD is attempting to deal with. But
that's right. And some texts in the New Testament are there, including some texts of Paul, to deal with this conspicuous and growing problem of the
Well,
delay.
let me respond. As a Christian, let me respond to, if that is the case, and what one of the central tenets of what they thought was going to happen never did,
right,
does that invalidate their message?
That's the question that honest Christians have to face. You said it perfectly. The only thing you didn't do was put it in a frame, because it's that important question. Does the fact that the expectation of the imminent coming of the kingdom of God, does the fact that that did not happen, and that we honestly must confess that in that sense they got it wrong, does that invalidate the basic driving ideas of
Well, it would bring you to a number of crucial issues in that if you believe that Jesus Christ was the actual Son of God and how could he possibly have been wrong about this?
Yes.
When he shared the same knowledge of God?
But I would like, for the moment, to steer clear of the problems that you get when you get into that Christology or Christology aspect of things. When that also starts centuries later. I like to stick with the New Testament, in which the status of Jesus as Messiah is almost clear enough, although there's the Messianic secret, which even muddles that one, and in which the claim that Jesus was God, that's a curious one too.
Well, let me answer my own question here in a way that will make it a little bit less. Jesus himself admits that he does not know the time or the hour, that only the Father knows the time or the hour of when things will happen.
Now you're really on the right track, because yes, that's the side of it that I want to talk about. The side of it where you're dealing with the New Testament itself, and where Jesus himself says, I can't tell you the exact time it's going to happen. Apparently then, when he's walking around with the apostles, they too, now we're rewinding all the way back, but he's walking these dusty roads of Galilee and facing the question, Rabbi or Master, as they spoke to Jesus, so when exactly is this kingdom of God that you're talking about? When exactly is it going to happen? And Jesus, you're right. The texts that we do have say you'll never know, and in fact when it does come, it's at the moment that you least expect it.